Everything was going well, and then my boss said that we need to take a recruiting tour to our agents abroad, and that I should be there too. I said okay. I was supposed to take a plane with my colleague in the evening, sleep there, have many interviews during the day, and fly home again the same evening. But I felt nervous about that. And with that the dark thoughts came back. I started thinking about the Andy situation again, and I was thinking about his wife, that I so much want to make amends. And I went through all kinds of scenarios in my head where we would all be with a therapist and I could explain myself. I just couldn't let it go. Everything that had happened just went in a loop through my head all the time, over and over again. They were still walking in my head, and I reached out to a coach that I was following on Instagram, and I asked her, why am I still hurting? I've been doing all the healing, I found my childhood trauma, I've been meditating daily, I've done all I could, why can't I let go, what am I missing? And she made a new post on her page, where it basically said, where there's still triggers, there is still healing to do. The triggers point you in the right direction. And I got it. It was not about the dark clouds bringing Andy along. It's about why the clouds would come in the first place. It's about the triggers. And when I asked myself what triggered me this time, the answer was clear. It was the upcoming business trip. I had this fear inside of me that this trip would cause a new depression and hypomania, that everything would start all over again and everything would go to hell again. I have always seen this last flight as the reason and cause for me spinning out of control. I heard all the stuff around it, but never looked at that flight, the reason for everything. There was never any real danger, it was only turbulences, so why did I freak out that much? What is lying behind that? It was time to get to the bottom of it. I did my shadow work meditation. And when I asked for the cause of my anxiety, I saw red, and it cleared up to blood. There was blood everywhere, and I knew exactly where I was. I got thrown 5 years back, 1 week before my daughter's first birthday. My husband was supposed to watch our daughter for 5 minutes, while I had to go to the bathroom. And suddenly I heard my daughter screaming and my husband's voice shouting in panic. They came down the stairs and he was shouting, "Don't look, don't look!" And there was blood everywhere. She had been pulling the cable of a glass lamp and it smashed over her foot. He had put a towel around her foot and shouted, "You have to drive, I can't drive, I'm in shock." I drove them to the hospital. It's just 2 minutes away from our flat. They took her in and put her under narcosis to search for more glass splinters and to stitch the foot together again. First, when she was out of sight, I started crying. While she was with the doctors, we went home and started washing away all the blood from my baby girl. And my husband told me that it looked like the foot was cut in two. After a few hours, we came back to the hospital and waited in the recovery for her to wake up. It was just so terrible to see her lying there with all the tubes coming out of her mouth. And then she woke up, smiling and brave like a warrior. I was so sorry. I felt I had failed her. I stayed with her in the hospital for the night and 1 more day, and then we could go home. Fortunately, the cut was just through the flesh. No bones or nerves were cut. I ran through all the memories, felt them and released the feelings. And then it was time for healing. My spirit guide joined me for this one. I was crying and saying she could have died, and he answered, exactly, and she didn't. If she was supposed to die, the lamp would have hit her head. But that didn't happen, because she's not supposed to die now. She could have died, but she didn't, because she's not supposed to. She got many guardian angels, and we wouldn't let anything happen to her, no matter if you are with her or not. We watch over her. It was not your fault. And he continued, say that you forgive yourself. And I said out loud, I forgive myself. And now say you forgive your husband. And I answered immediately, no. And he insisted, say you forgive your husband, but still, no. And he persisted, say you forgive your husband. And the third time I managed to say it. I forgive him. And I understood that unconsciously I was blaming him, and that I had been carrying a lot of resentment towards him inside of me. I was not aware of that. And I would freak out each time I was supposed to travel because I was afraid he couldn't keep her safe. And then my daughter came to me in my meditation and hugged me and asked why I was sad. And she said that I had been great when she had the accident. I held it together, I drove to the hospital, and I was strong in front of her and made her feel safe, and I've never left her side. And that this accident didn't mean that I never can leave her side again. And she said, I'll be fine, you can go on your business trip. The weight was lifted, and after that I wasn't anxious anymore about the upcoming trip. And from that point on I was looking forward to the trip. It was exactly 1 year after this momentous flight, and I decided this time I would rewrite the story instead of repeating it. And I also got the last piece of the puzzle. I understand now the whole story. When I was a child, I had a dad with really bad mood swings, and my survival tactic was being the perfect child, trying to improve so he wouldn't have a reason to explode. This survival tactic from my childhood then translated into becoming a people pleaser in my adulthood. I wouldn't speak up, I was trying to solve things on my own, being always nice to everyone, and if someone treated me badly, I would accept that, and I would try to improve and fight for their approval. And I would trauma bond. Because of my childhood, I lacked the feeling of being worthy and feeling good enough just the way I am. I became my biggest critic. With the pregnancy, my lack of self-confidence would get worse, and I felt even more like a failure. Also, the job situation was making things worse over time. My unmet need was the feeling of being good enough just the way I am. Then the accident happened, which was a new trauma. That's why the flight triggered a strong reaction, because of this unhealed trauma, the fear of my daughter not being safe without me. And that then led to a depression. My coping mechanism kicked in, trauma bonding. I trauma bonded with Andy. It was Andy because he was never critical of me. Even if my work was screwed up, he would always be nice and understanding. He listened to everything without telling me that I should toughen up or improve. He liked me the way I was. He met my unmet need that I had been building up over the years. I trauma bonded, and at the same time my hypomania kicked in after my depression, and my brain just switched off. Considering all these factors, I actually did better than I would expect. But here's another thing. If you try to fix an inner unmet need externally, you will get the opposite. So you're forced to find it in yourself. When things fell apart, I got the opposite of what I was looking for. He told me that I don't matter and that I'm worthless to him. How can you say any of these words to someone? It still blows my mind. And it's the same with my desire to make peace. I try to make peace with him, instead of making peace with the situation with myself. I should have looked for peace inside of me, and when I tried to get peace externally, peace with him, I got the opposite. So, the plane trip got me to trauma bond, and the hypomania kicked in. My brain switched off, and then he started with mind games in addition. And these three factors combined really messed me up. I got addicted and struggled with obsessive thoughts, and Andy became my coping mechanism on top of it. My brain still recognizes Andy as a solution for my unmet needs, and that started already very early. Long before our affair, I would visit him each time there was stress at work. My brain got wired this way over a long time. Andy is my coping mechanism. Like other people might turn to chocolate, my brain would turn to Andy. My brain just hasn't caught up with the new reality yet. And that's why he shows up in my head every time I feel stressed. He's just my comfort food, my chocolate. So I don't have to wonder why I think of Andy. I have to wonder what causes me to think of Andy. What is stressing me eternally? It's not about Andy. He's just a coping mechanism for now. It is about the trigger. And then there's one interesting thing they say about narcissists. They are not capable of deep feelings. They just mirror the people around them. And when he was with me, he was the nicest person in the world. And then he chose her and became suddenly the most hateful person I've ever met. This means all the love he gave me was never about me, it was me. And all the hatred he gave me was never about me either, it was him mirroring his wife. I always saw him as the nicest, loving, caring and compassionate person. But he wasn't. He wasn't amazing. He was just mirroring me. I am amazing. And that also means that he's not a hateful person. He's no person. I think I've never met the real Andy. I think he got buried a long time ago. You don't get like this overnight. The day of my business trip came, and my husband and my daughter drove me to the airport. She didn't want me to leave, but I just jumped out before I changed my mind. And everything went fine. I was relaxed during the whole travel, and I got my own room this time. I talked to my husband on the phone, and he was very proud of me, and it was the first time I was away from my daughter without being anxious. I felt them in my heart as if they were with me, and I could enjoy staying at a nice hotel. The next day was filled with many interviews. In a little break I had a cappuccino and looked outside the window, and was just enjoying myself. I was happy. It was just me, somewhere far away, and I was happy. I felt I was me again. In the evening we were flying home again. On the plane I put my headphones on and listened to one of my guided meditations. And I saw myself in the clouds again, jumping in the clouds with my little friends. It was just like a big celebration. 1 year ago I was still crippled by my trauma, and now I could fly again and enjoy myself. I was happy again, and my spirit guide told me, now you are healed, and now you have to tell your story. And when you've done that, we will let you forget. And I understood. It was time to find my voice. That will be the last step of my healing journey. And all these videos here are me telling my story. They will not be available in my country. No need to bring more pain to their family. We landed without any complications, and I took a cab home. It was in the middle of the night, and my husband was waiting for me. I was so happy he was still with me. And then he said, someone is waiting for you to say goodnight. My sweet little baby girl was sleeping in my bed. When I went to her, she woke up and smiled and said, Mama, and hugged me and looked at me and smiled again and said, I love you, and fell asleep again. I had tears in my eyes. I was home. I was myself again, and I still had a home. It took me a terrible long time to find my way back. But I was home again, without any doubt, and I was loved, and I always have been.
Set it off, let your body feel the rhythm groove. Feet moving, your body turn into a